November the 29th, 1934. A black car pulls away from Mansion House, and inside it, the Lord Mayor of London is making his way to Buckingham Palace. This moment survives on film. British Pathé cameras were there, and the footage still exists. The Lord Mayor leaving the city, carrying gifts for a royal wedding. The newsreel lists what he's bringing: Georgian plate, and then 4 words that are the reason we're here: a jewel tiara. Not a gift from a king, not an inheritance from a mother or a grandmother. A tiara, bought and presented by an entire city for a princess who had not yet spent a single day as part of the family she was marrying into. And here's what nobody can tell you with any certainty: where that tiara had been before London bought it. 1 diamond fringe, 3 Kent brides, 3 generations of a single family. And a first act, before any of them wore it, that nobody has ever fully solved. Let's start with what we don't know, because in this story, that's where the real intrigue lives. The tiara the City of London presented in 1934 was not new. By the time it reached Mansion House, it already had a life, or at least the historians who've studied it believe it did. Here's the story they tell, and I'll be clear about where it stops being provable. Around 1870, a diamond fringe tiara was made for Grand Duchess Maria Pavlovna, the woman history remembers as the first Grand Duchess Vladimir, one of the great jewel collectors of Imperial Russia. No maker's name survives with it, no invoice, no workshop record, just a design in the classic Russian fringe style that would change hands more than once. When the Grand Duchess died in 1920, her children began selling off her collection. The world she'd known was gone, and jewels became currency for exile. Researchers believe the fringe was bought sometime that decade by the Rajah of Pudukkottai for his Australian-born wife, Molly Fink, who was photographed in a diamond fringe during those years. It fits, it's consistent, but it's a theory built from photographs, not a paper trail. Then, after the Rajah's death, the tiara came up for sale again. And in 1934, the City of London acquired it for Princess Marina, Vladimir to Pudukkottai to London. Every link in that chain is probable, not proven. No document survives to confirm a single handover. What we can point to is the tiara itself, that unmistakable Russian fringe, the kokoshnik shape, diamonds rising from a base like a wall of light. It's the kind of tiara made for Romanov brides as part of their dowries. Whether this one was truly forged in that world, we can't say. We can only say it looks like it was born there. So before it ever touched a royal head, this tiara already carried a mystery. And that mystery is about to meet a princess with her own tie to that same vanished Russian world. Princess Marina of Greece and Denmark was, by every account of her era, one of the most admired women in Europe, poised, elegant, the kind of bride the British public had been waiting for. When she married Prince George, Duke of Kent, on the 29th of November 1934, the country didn't just watch, it participated. And the City of London's gift tells you something about how much this wedding meant to people who had no personal connection to the Kents at all. Think about what that gesture actually was. Not a wedding present from a relative, tucked quietly among family gifts. A tiara, commissioned, or at least selected and purchased, by the Corporation of the City of London, presented publicly, filmed and delivered to Buckingham Palace with Georgian plate and civic pride. It's a gift that says, this marriage matters to us, the ordinary people of this city, not just to the family it's joining. And here's where the story gets tempting, because Marina wasn't only Greek and Danish by descent. Her mother was Grand Duchess Elena Vladimirovna of Russia, Romanov blood, one generation removed from the very world this tiara's design seemed to echo. So it's easy to look at a Russian-style fringe landing in the hands of a princess with Russian ancestry and think, how perfect, how deliberate, the style come home. I want to be careful here because this is exactly the kind of detail that gets dressed up as fact when it's really just a beautiful coincidence nobody documented as intentional. No surviving City of London record, no contemporary press report quotes anyone, a Lord Mayor, an official, Marina herself, saying the Russian style was chosen because of her ancestry. It's tempting to believe the symbolism was the point, but we simply don't have the paperwork to say the city chose this design on purpose. Now, here's the detail that surprises people most, and it's the one worth sitting with. Marina did not wear the City of London fringe to her wedding. Specialist tiara historians are unanimous on this, even though plenty of casual coverage over the decades has gotten it wrong. At Westminster Abbey on her wedding day, Marina wore her mother's tiara, the Vladimir fringe, the actual Romanov piece that had come to her through Elena Vladimirovna. The City of London's gift, given to mark that same wedding, wasn't the one she walked down the aisle in. So what was it then, if not a wedding tiara? It became something arguably more meaningful, the tiara of her married life. Marina wore it constantly through the following decades, to the coronation of King George VI in 1937, to state occasions through the 1950s and into the early 60s. Cecil Beaton photographed her in it more than once, cementing it as one of the defining images of the Duchess of Kent. It wasn't the tiara she married in, it was the tiara she reigned in. And that distinction matters because it means the City of London's gift wasn't really about a single day in 1934. It became about everything after, 3 decades of Marina as one of the most photographed women in British royal life, always in that unmistakable fringe. Then, in 1963, something happened that turned a personal tiara into a family tradition. Marina's only daughter, Princess Alexandra, was marrying the Honourable Angus Ogilvy at Westminster Abbey, and Marina loaned her the City of London fringe. Alexandra wore it on the 26th of April 1963, bride number 1 in the sense that matters for this story. Not because she was the first woman ever to wear it, but because she was the first bride to wear it at her own wedding. Her mother had worn it as a duchess for decades of state occasions, but never at the altar. Alexandra broke that pattern, and in doing so, she started something the tiara hadn't yet done for itself. Marina died in 1968, and here's the quiet pivot in this story. The moment where the tiara could have gone one way and instead went another. Alexandra had worn it as a bride. Alexandra had a documented, loving relationship with the piece. And yet the tiara didn't pass to her. It passed to Marina's younger son, Prince Michael of Kent. This is confirmed across the record. Tiara catalogues, jewellery historians all agree on the line of inheritance. But it's worth pausing on what that means. The daughter who wore it to her own wedding wasn't the one who inherited it. The son who hadn't yet married was. And it's his branch of the family, not Alexandra's, that the tiara has belonged to ever since. 10 years later, in 1978, Prince Michael married Baroness Marie Christine von Reibnitz. And according to the jewellery historians who've traced this piece, Prince Michael gave the fringe tiara to his new wife, making her, in effect, its next great wearer, even though it legally remained a family heirloom rather than her personal possession outright. Now, and this is where precision really matters, because it's one of the most commonly repeated mistakes in coverage of this jewel. Princess Michael of Kent did not wear the City of London fringe at her wedding ceremony. The marriage to Prince Michael was a civil ceremony in Vienna on the 30th of June 1978, and no tiara was worn for it at all. What actually happened was this. Afterward, at a ball held at the Schwarzenberg Palace, Princess Michael appeared in the tiara, paired with a cream Belleville sassoon gown. That's confirmed by multiple specialist sources, even though plenty of lifestyle coverage over the years has quietly blurred ceremony and ball into a single moment. She's bride number 2 in this story, but the wedding tiara she's usually credited with wearing was, in fact, a ball tiara. From that point on, though, Princess Michael became the Fringe's defining modern wearer. Decades of portraits, decades of state occasions, and one detail that tells you something about how deliberately she thought about this jewel's identity. Photographs confirm that she sometimes mounted it on a velvet kokoshnik base, topped with a diamond riviere, physically amplifying the Russian silhouette the tiara already carried. That styling choice is documented. Why she made it is not, nobody left behind a quote explaining the decision, but it's hard not to read it as a woman leaning into a story rather than away from it. If this tiara's design echoed a lost Romanov world, Princess Michael's styling made that echo louder, not quieter. She wore it as recently as 2018 at the Queen's Commonwealth dinner at Buckingham Palace, one of its last documented public outings before the piece would appear again, a year later, on someone else entirely. By the end of the 1970s then, the tiara belonged fully to Prince Michael's branch of the family. Marina had made it hers as a duchess. Alexandra had made it hers as a bride, briefly, on loan. Princess Michael had made it hers for the better part of 40 years, which left one question hanging over the family, unanswered for another generation. Whose daughter would wear it next? On the 18th of May 2019, Lady Gabriella Windsor married Thomas Kingston at St George's Chapel, Windsor Castle. And she wore the Kent City of London Fringe tiara. That sentence alone doesn't tell you the interesting part. The interesting part is what she didn't wear. The Kent family collection isn't small. There's the festoon tiara, diamond scrolls and pearls, a piece Marina herself debuted in the 1950s and wore to the 1953 coronation. There's the pearl fringe, delicate and bandeau style, used as a wedding tiara by other Kent women. Gabriella had options, real ones, with real family history behind them. And she chose the City of London Fringe anyway. Coverage at the time, Tatler, Town and Country, the specialist royal jewellery press, read that choice the same way, as a tribute to two women at once. Her grandmother Marina, who'd worn it as Duchess for decades, and her mother, Princess Michael, who'd made it her signature piece since 1978. Gabriella wasn't just wearing a beautiful tiara, she was choosing the one piece that belonged to both women who raised her family's public identity. And here's where the story closes a loop that's been opened since the cold open of this video. Through her father, Prince Michael, Gabriella descends from British, Danish and German royal lines. But through Marina, through her grandmother, she also carries Greek and Danish royal blood, and Romanov blood, from Grand Duchess Elena Vladimirovna. Think about what that means, sitting quietly underneath everything we've just walked through. A tiara whose design echoes a lost Imperial Russian world, a world nobody can definitively prove it came from, now sits on the head of a woman who genuinely does carry Romanov ancestry generations later. We still don't know if this tiara was ever actually a Vladimir piece. But if it was, it has found its way, eventually, to somebody with that exact bloodline running through her. That's not proof of anything. It's just the kind of resonance history occasionally produces on its own, without any document to explain it. But the moment from that day I keep coming back to isn't the lineage. It's smaller than that, and far more human. Gabriella's veil was extraordinary. 6 meters of tulle, embroidered with flowers, designed by Luisa Beccaria to go with her blush lace gown. And in an interview afterward, she described what actually happened as she walked up the aisle. Her young bridesmaids, following behind her, stepped on the sheer tulle. Here's how she put it, in her own words. Suddenly I could feel my tiara start to pull back, and in those few unnerving moments, I thought it would come crashing down with an almighty clunk. Read that again. A woman walking toward her own wedding, wearing a tiara with a documented Romanov silhouette and a genuinely unresolved origin story, worried for a few seconds that the whole thing was simply going to fall off her head. It didn't. It held, because her hairdresser had pinned it securely enough to survive a tugged veil and a startled bride. That's not a detail you find in any jewellery catalogue. It's the one moment in this entire story where the tiara stops being history and becomes something a real woman actually felt on her actual wedding day. That 2019 ceremony is, as of now, the tiara's most recent bridal chapter. 3 brides, 1 jewel, and we'll leave it there. So here's where 3 threads meet. A jewel with no birth certificate, possibly Vladimir, possibly Pudukotai, possibly neither, and nobody alive can settle it with a document. A gift that came not from a family, but from an entire city, presented on film in 1934 for a princess who hadn't yet worn a single day of the title she was marrying into. And a diamond fringe that has now crowned 3 Kent brides, Alexandra in 1963, Princess Michael at her wedding ball in 1978, and Gabriella in 2019, passing down 3 generations of one family, while Marina, the woman it was actually given to, wore it not as a bride at all, but as the Duchess who made it hers for over 30 years. We still can't tell you who made this tiara, or for whom it was first intended. That question is, honestly, probably never going to be answered. The people who could have answered it are long gone, and the paperwork, if it ever existed, hasn't survived. What we can tell you, with real confidence, is exactly where it's been since 1934, and on whose heads it has rested. That's not nothing. In a family with this many jewels and this much history, knowing precisely where one tiara has travelled, through a duchess, a daughter, a second wife, and a granddaughter, is its own kind of rare. Which of the next generation do you think should wear it? And do you believe the Romanov story? Or do you think we're all just seeing a pattern that isn't really there? If you'd like more of these deep source dives into the royal jewels behind the headlines, this channel is where I'll keep telling them. A like helps more of these stories reach people who love this history as much as you clearly do, and subscribing means you won't miss the next one.